We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Blogtalk Radio.
Good morning and welcome to the Friday Forecast. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'm here. I'm your host. And I'm having a hell of a time opening up the chat room today for whatever reason. Blog Talk is just a little wonky. What do we got here? Let's see what we got. I'm trying to open up a chat in this window. And it's trying desperately to connect to the server. I've also been having some problems with my internet connection today, so bear with me. It could be a choppy Friday if you're waiting to get into the chat room. Well, at least I'm broadcasting. I'm broadcasting live. The day is the 3rd of February. So we're 2-3 today, 2-3-1-2. And we're about to witness Neptune going into Pisces this weekend, starting, I believe it's today. Interestingly, it is coinciding with the birth date of Muhammad, which takes place tomorrow. It is called Mawlid. Mawlid, his birth date, and the Islamic year is 1433. Should be an interesting experience. I'm having a hell of a time with the chat. My flash is, let's see if we can do this here. Try to get this fired up. Is not happening in a very user-friendly fashion. So it's not fun. The chat room is a big part of what I do, especially since I don't have a guest today. I'm carrying the ball for as long as I can for the next 2 hours. So I may not probably talk for the next 2 hours, but I will share for as long as I can. The chat is problematic, so I'm not sure if it's happening today. Let's see. I'm getting all kinds of messages about getting upgrades and all kinds of crap here. I'm wondering if Blog Talk changed some things overnight. So let's see. Let's try this one more time with the chat room. Let's see what happens here. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. So if there's no chat room, I'm afraid you're just going to have to listen, unfortunately. That is a problem. And I don't want to detract from the momentum of the show too much. Let me try this one more time. Let me launch the small chat and see if this will work here. We'll give it one more crack. And if it doesn't work, then I'm going to probably just move on and get into the show, unfortunately. And then I'll try to upgrade all my pieces, my flash, and all that stuff. So it is struggling to open up. Okay. Well, one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to do a quick perusal of the news very quickly. And then I want to talk about John Teeter. And the reason I want to talk about John Teeter is I did a post on my website last Friday. It was notes called Future Notes from 2023. And essentially the post was coming from the perspective of a 19-year-old. And, you know, in my mind's eye, I played that 19-year-old out to be my son. So, by the way, if any of you have, like Janet, if you're listening, or Erica, if you're listening, if you have any access to blogtalk to find out if you could, you know, send them an email or something to be able to chat, that would be great, because it's a little bothersome on my part. So anyway, I did a post on Future Notes from 2023, and what I tried to do is I tried to get into some, you know, predictive astrology through a fictional prism or filter. And part of the story resembled a little bit of the John Teeter story, and I can't deny that I haven't been affected by the John Teeter story, because, I mean, if you think about it, in some ways it makes a great deal of sense in how that timeline or that potential reality gets played out in some of the things that evolved out of that timeline, and those series of and sequences of experiences evolve. And so what we're talking about is, you know, how people have to fend for themselves, how they become much closer to their own food and all kinds of stuff. So let's go back in time and let's look at the John Teeter story for just a moment. So let's see. Let's go to, if you don't know who John Teeter is, let me try to give you a quick thumbnail about who he is. So John Teeter showed up in 1999. Okay, 1999, and he started to show up in chat rooms and around the world, and he started to talk to people. And there are actually copies of the chats that took place with Teeter, and they're fairly interesting chats. I mean, he says that he is from the future, and he gives very clear sort of instructions and details about how he has come here from the future. And essentially what's happened in John Teeter's timeline is that there is a world war that takes place in 2015, and it wipes out about 3 billion people on the planet. It's huge. It's a big deal. And Teeter is part of there's also, in conjunction with the world war, there's also a revolution that takes place in the United States. So there's fighting amongst people that, quote unquote, want to be free, and people that want to take freedom away from other people. So what happens is that you've got this world war that's going on, you've got a revolution in the United States that's going on, and apparently one of the things that happens is that Russia, again, the Teeter timeline, nukes part of the United States in an attempt to help the quote-unquote resistance. So this is what happens. Man, my computer is really screwed up today. It is really screwed up. I'm having a hard time with pages loading. So anyway, what happens is that now there's fallout in the U.S. in this post global war, U.S. Okay, so that's happening. That's taking place. Also, one of the things that occurs during John Titor's timeline is there's a proliferation of mad cow disease, and you have to be very careful about what you eat. And so this is a very big deal in the John Titor story. So he went online and he started to tell his story, and it was pretty remarkable. He went online 2 times, and part of his story is that he actually, excuse me, he actually goes and visits his parents and visits a young version of himself, and that takes place, I believe, in the Midwest. So he actually stays with his parents, and he sees his young John Titor body. And one of the excuse me, how he travels through time is there is they punched a hole in what's called the singularity, and the hole was punched by CERN, and it was when they were playing with trying to find dark matter, which is what CERN has been doing, by the way. And John Titor, excuse me, talks about CERN in detail, great detail, in his 1999 posts. Not a lot of people knew about CERN in 1999. Not a lot of people. And he was able to talk about it and talk about not just CERN, but the technology. So Titor was a soldier in 2036, and at the age of 31, he actually moves backwards in time from an army base, and they send him back in time for 2 separate reasons. One was to, I think, communicate with people from this time during the 1999 experience, and the other time he gets sent back into time, I believe, is, I think it's in the 70s, and he actually goes to IBM in San Jose, California, to get a computer, and it's a computer that his grandfather in that timeline actually worked on, and the computer has the ability to process Unix code in a very interesting way. And Titor and that timeline needed that computer in order to break down more information, because a lot of the information systems have been destroyed as a result of the war. Okay, so he actually hung out, shared his story with people, went back in time, and I think he came twice. So let's look at some of the predictions that Titor had. This is from November 2000. And let's see what we have here. By the way, I'm on the site johntitor.com, which is run by Oliver Williams, who has been on Coast to Coast. John Titor's story also very much, in some ways, resembles the story of the Terminator. And so, in terms of timelines, let me see here. I can find this. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what we have here. Posts by. Let's try this. So these are posts by Titor from his chats in chat rooms online. Okay. So let's go to some of these. So these are questions that people posed to him while he was online. So one of the questions was, what does traveling in time look like? And this is what Teeter has to say. It says the unit has a ramp-up time after the destination coordinates are fed into the computers. An audible alarm and a small light start a short countdown, at which point you should be secured in the seat. The gravity field generated by the unit overtakes you very quickly. You feel a tug toward the unit similar to rising in an elevator, and it continues to rise based on the power setting the unit is working under. At 100% power, the constant pull of gravity can be as high as 2 Gs or more depending on how close you are to the unit. There are no serious side effects, but I try to avoid eating before a flight. No bright flash of light is seen outside. The vehicle appears to accelerate as the light is bent around it. We have to wear sunglasses or close our eyes as this happens due to a short burst of ultraviolet radiation. Personally, I think it looks like you're driving under a rainbow. After that, it appears to fade to black. It remains totally black until the unit is turned off. We're advised to keep the windows closed as a great deal of heat builds up outside the car. The gravity field also traps a small air pocket around the car that acts as your only oxygen supply unless you bring compressed air with you. The pocket will last for a short period, and carbon sensor tells us when it's too dangerous. The C204 unit is accurate from 50 to 60 years a jump and travels at about 10 years an hour at 100%. You do hear a slight hum as the unit operates, and when the power changes or the unit turns off, there's a great deal of electrical crackling noise from static electricity. Here's the next question posed to him. What are your memories of 2036? I remember 2036 very clearly. It is difficult to describe 2036 in great detail without spending a great deal of time explaining why things are so different. In 2036, I live in Central Florida with my family, and I'm currently stationed at an Army base in Tampa. A world war in 2015 killed nearly 3 billion people. The people that survived grew closer together. Life is centered on the family and then the community. I cannot imagine living even a few hundred miles away from my parents. There is no large industrial complex creating masses of useless food and recreational items. Food and livestock is grown and sold locally. People spend much more time reading and talking together face to face. Religion is taken seriously, and everyone can multiply and divide in their heads. Will you show us more of the operations manual for your time machine? I will consider it, but I do not expect that they are worth anything to most people except as a curiosity. If you met yourself on another world line, what would happen? It has always surprised me why that concept is so hard for people to imagine and accept. Nothing would happen. The universe would not end, and there are no paradox problems that threaten existence. Temporal space-time is made up of every possible quantum state. The Everett-Wheeler model is correct. I have met and or seen myself twice on different world lines. The first was a training mission, and the second is now. I was born in 1998, so the other me is too on this world line. There is a saying where I come from. Every possible thing that can happen or will happen has already happened somewhere. How is our world line different from this? Yours. For starters, the fact that I'm here makes it different. I've also noticed little things like news events that happen at different times, football games won by other teams, things like that. I would guess the temporal divergence between this world line in my original, where did it go, is about 1 to 2%. Of course, the longer I'm here, the larger that divergence becomes from my point of view. What type of vehicle is in the picture you posted? It's a 1967 Chevrolet. Does your machine allow you to control time travel? Yes, it can be controlled. However, the distortion unit has operational limits. Imagine your path through time is through a cone. The farther away from the center of the cone, the more differences you will see in the world line. The C204 begins to break away at about 60 years. This means the level of confidence drops rapidly after 60 years of travel, and the world line divergence increases. In other words, if I wanted to go back 2,000 years and meet Christ, there's a better than average chance I would end up on a world line where he was never born. The computer units and gravity sensors record your trip, and you are quite easily able to return to your point of origin. I am aware that research is being done on faster units with more accurate clocks. I imagine that they will be able to go back farther with a higher degree of divergence confidence. Are you drawn back to your world line of origin for any reason? Is instability a problem for you? I'm not sure what you mean by stable. If you mean mentally, there are many things that bother me here, but being with my parents right now is important to me. Physically, the only really thing is the number of colds I get. Are you able to return home? Yes. Is radiation a problem? I'm not sure what radiation you mean. If you mean from the unit, it vents X-rays and gamma radiation out of the rear. As long as you stay away from that, you should be okay. I keep a radiation detector with me to check my environment to make sure the unit isn't leaking. What does light look like for you when you time travel? The light bending only lasts a second. It's like driving under a tunnel and being in total black. So I'm reading from John Teeter and his Q&A that he put up online back in 2000. Again, I'm sorry about the chat room. I'm having technical difficulties, and I will deal with it today after the show so we can be up and running on Monday. So hang in there and have a mental chat. Chat with each other on the fourth dimension. Let's try that today, shall we? See if you can visualize. Use it as an exercise. See if you can visualize chatting and talking with other people. Okay? Are there any physical effects from the machine? Peter says the only real physical trace is a large chunk of ground missing from the point of origin and a large pile of dirt at the destination. The gravity field surrounds a small portion of the earth under you and takes it along for the ride. There is really no way around this. Here's what he says here. This is from November 6, 2000. Perhaps it's a bit easier to understand why time travelers do not reveal themselves. Yes, you can travel forward in time. No, you do not need an invite from the future. I first saw the car in 2036. The idea was to find a vehicle that would not draw too much attention for the time period. Unfortunately, there were not very many suitable vehicles around in 2036, and I sold the car when I arrived in 2000. You do not rewrite history. I can only affect what happens here just as easily as you can. Why do people in this time period worry so much about time travelers destroying their world line when they have no problem doing it themselves every day? My goal is not to be believed. Most people do not take the news of the war very well, but I find that everyone believes it's inevitable. Even in your own history, are not great inventions and discoveries made during a time of war in your effort to kill and maim in new and more efficient ways? No, I do not work for GE or any other company. Are stock tips really the first thing you want to know about in the future? As a representative of your time period, do you realize what that says about you? You should probably know that this time is not remembered for its selflessness, charity, or ability to work together. Why would I want to talk to you? Why don't you believe you have something interesting or worthwhile to say to be someone in the future? This is November 6th. He says, no, the ice caps are not melting any faster than they are now. There is also far less smog and industrial waste in 2036. He says here, you asked about the North Polar ice pack. I never said the environment wasn't a problem. Doesn't water expand when it freezes? If the polar ice cap melted, wouldn't the sea level go down? I don't know if there's enough ice for this to make a difference, and I'm not an expert on global warming. This is again from November 6th. Yes, I realize people become hostile. I don't expect anyone to believe me, and I have nothing to sell. I take no offense by it. Just out of curiosity, if you were a time traveler, what do you think it would take to get people to believe you? I suppose we could agree that no particular era in history is famous for its development of humanity, but just once I would like to hear questions like, what is family life like in the future? How does society deal with poverty? Is AIDS, abortion, and drug use still a problem? Why don't I give you a stock tip? The money you make would dilute the intelligence and forethought that a smart person had in picking the stock all by themselves. If I told you how to get rich, I would be taking money from them and giving it to you. I don't see any problem with that, John. Sorry about that. Getting back to my proper universe is tricky but possible. Yes, another jump would take me to a different family. When traveling to other world lines, there is a system of clocks and gravity sensors in the machine that sample the environment before dropping out. It's called VGL, Variable Gravity Lock. If a cement block were there, the machine would backtrack until it sensed a relative congruity to the original gravity sample. A great deal of time and effort goes into picking just the right spot since you cannot physically move during a displacement. He also says, keep in mind a couple of points as I answer your questions. First, I'm not a physicist. Time travel is not only a tool that allowed me to do my job in 1975. Most airline pilots are probably not aerospace engineers. Second, let me give you an example of the position we are in. Imagine you live in the year 1900 and a time traveler attempts to explain how a jet engine works. Even though the invention of the airplane is only a decade in the future, he would have to find some frame of reference to explain the basics of flight. Then he would have to outline the mechanics of how the engine works. As amazing as it would sound, the jet would be invented about 30 years later. Time travel is achieved by altering gravity. This concept is already proven by atomic clock experiments. The closer an observer is to a gravity source, high mass, the slower time passes for them. Traveling at high speeds mimics this effect, which equals the twin paradox of faster-than-light travel. However, this type of gravity manipulation is not sufficient to alter your world line. The basic math to alter world lines exists right now. Tipler first described a working time machine through his theory of massive rotating spheres. I apologize for the website, but it was the only one I could find quickly. Certain types of black holes also exhibit time travel abilities of Tipler cylinders. Kerr was one of the first to describe the dual event horizons of a rotating black hole. As with Tipler cylinders, it was possible to travel on a time-like trip through a Kerr black hole and end up in a different world line without being squished by the gravity of the singularity. The mass and gravitational field of a microsingularity can then be manipulated by injecting electrons onto its surface. By rotating micro-singularities at high speed, it is possible to create and modify a local gravity sinusoid that replicates the effects of a Kerr black hole. For those asking how come microsingularity doesn't swallow the Earth, or want to know details about the size, stability, mass, temperature, and resulting Hawking radiation from such a thing, those details I must keep to myself. Yes, you can travel into the future, and it takes less energy than going into the past. The computer system is connected to the unit through an electrical bus. There are actually 3 computers linked together that take the same signals from the gravity sensors and clocks. They use a Borda error correcting protocol that checks the integrity of the data and trips the VGL system. I am not aware of any physical change to my DNA or aura. I do seem to be more susceptible to colds. Yes, you will remember me if you want to. World lines do not change that way, and I will only become an insignificant part of your history. Very interesting stuff. This is what he has to say about religion. It's kind of interesting here. He says, yes, I believe in Jesus Christ, and we pray to God in churches. There are some differences you may be interested in. Religion is a major part of people's life in 2036. Pain and change tend to bring people together and closer to God. However, religion is far more personal than it is now. There are no huge centralized religions, and people talk openly about their beliefs. It might also interest you to know that the day of worship is Saturday, the day God meant to be the Sabbath, and the 10 Commandments have been restored to the 10 that God gave us. Life is much more rural in the future, but high technology is used to communicate and travel. People raise a great deal of their own food and do more farm work. Yes, compared to now, we do work long hours, After the war, my father made a living selling oranges up and down the west coast of Florida. My closest friend raises horses, and another works for a company that maintains wireless internet nodes. Life has changed so much over my lifetime that it's hard to pin down a normal day. When I was 13, I was a soldier. As a teenager, I helped my dad haul cargo. I went to college when I was 31, and I was recruited to time travel shortly after that. Again, I suppose an average day in 2036 is like an average day on the farm. Yes, there is a post office. The internet is still alive and well in the future. People spend more time talking because life is more centered on the community. I've noticed the same type of effect here when the power goes off. People tend to come out of their homes and actually spend time with their neighbors. There's a lot more personal trust and less paranoia. When I'm with my parents, I live in a community made up of tree houses on a large river in Florida. The river floods sometimes, and we have access to the Gulf. Most of our neighbors make their living off the sea or in moving cargo by boat. So here's something interesting. Apparently, the timeline has changed according to what Teeter is about to share. He says here there was a civil war in the United States that starts in 2005. That conflict flares up and down for 10 years. In 2015, Russia launches a nuclear strike against the major cities in the United States, which is the other side of the Civil War from my perspective. China and Europe. The United States counterattacks. U.S. cities are destroyed along with the American federal empire. Thus, we in the country won. The European Union and China were also destroyed. Russia is now our largest trading partner. And the capital of the U.S. was moved to Omaha, Nebraska. Now, how many times have you seen Omaha, Nebraska in this kind of timeline, right? If you look at the Gordon Scallion maps, you know, it's Omaha, Nebraska on the center of a large waterway coming up through from the south and from the New Madrid fault line and all that stuff. So here Teeter is kind of mimicking that model. So he says here, no new information there on UFOs and aliens. I find that an interesting subject myself. Personally, I think UFOs might be time travelers with very sophisticated distortion units, but that might be a bit wacky. One of the biggest reasons why food production is localized is because the environment is affected with disease and radiation. We're making huge strides in getting it cleaned up. Water is produced on a community level, and we do not eat meat, and we do eat meat that we raise ourselves. Yes, genetic engineering is used, but it's like any other technology. It can be good and bad. One thing we did not do was create more hybrid seeds. What are people thinking? He says here, I am a Christian agnostic. And then the host puts in parentheses to John mean Gnostic. I do not believe faith alone is enough to get us back to God. I'm not sure what happens when we die, but I'm pretty sure it's not a walk in the park. Space travel, he says we are working on it. What future technologies can we look forward to? He says, I hesitate to answer, but I'll give a bit. Hydrogen fuel cells and more efficient solar cells are big deals. Computer technology and software get much capitals, much better. My greatest joy is sailing, sailing for fun. I enjoy swimming, playing cards, reading, playing games on the net, talking with people who live in other countries. As a community, we celebrate much more and have bonfires and dances. My hobby is sorting through old magazines and videos of life before the war. After the war, early new communities gathered around the current universities. That's where the libraries were. I went to school at Fort UF, which is now called University of Florida. Not too much is different, except the military is a large part of people's life. We spend a great deal of time in the fields and farms at the university or fort. Most of my memories growing up are not fond. Life was very hard. Simple things make me happy, like hugging my mother and father. Yes, we have cameras, more digital. Film is used like painting is today. No hologram camera, though. Yes, we have phones, but the service is through the web. Most power generation is localized. It amazes me how much power is wasted now. Yes, solar is big. There is thought that a singularity generator could also be used, but most people are against it. The elderly are highly revered and looked after on a community level. So are orphans. There's always something people can do now, no matter what. The idea of avoiding work is looked down on. Everyone pulls together to keep the community strong. Hats are more common in the future, and flashy colors are less common. Dress is much more functional, and we dress up whenever we get a chance. I have noticed that no one in this time dresses for occasions, even when they have the clothes. Why do people wear shorts to church? We do not spend nearly the amount of time on our hair as people do now. Women like to wear their hair longer, and men have it much shorter. Both sexes shave it all off when they're in active military service. Far less medical treatment in the future, even though it's more advanced. People die when they know it's time to die. No lasers, genetic medicine, and cloning organs are obviously new techs in the future. The Constitution was changed after the war. We have 5 presidents that are voted in and out on different term periods. The vice president is the president of the Senate, and they are voted separately. We have cars, just not a whole bunch of them. There is public transportation from city to city. Here, November 7th, he says, if I could bring some material saying back to your time from 2036, it would be a copy of the new U.S. Constitution. Yes, you could travel to a future that was 0.5 seconds ahead of now, but not with my machine. The C204 uses the second as the basic unit of measure. C206 may be capable of 0.05 seconds. Let's see if there's anything else here that's interesting. He says, what type of vehicle will you get to go back in since you sold the other car? It's a 1987 four-wheel drive. Let's see. Okay. So it gets into some more. Oh, here it is. This is interesting. This is from November 15th. This is when somebody asks him why he went back to 1975. He says, the first leg of my trip was from 2036 to 1975. After 2 VGL checks, the divergence was estimated at about 2.5%. I was sent to get an IBM computer system called the 5100. It was one of the first portable computers made and has the ability to read the older IBM programming languages. In addition to APL and BASIC, we need the system to debug various legacy computer programs in 2036. Unix has a problem in 2038. So that's why he went back in time to get that IBM computer. So here is what he says on November 21st. It says here, all the questions asked have been answered in one way or another. You assume I'm here to start a war. This is kind of interesting. So consider this. You are a time traveler who wishes to go back in time to 1941 because your grandparents lived close to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. You realize you can't stop the war, but you may be able to help them prepare for it. Strangely, December 7th comes and goes with no sneak attack. As the war in Europe rages on, Japan fails to join the Axis power. There is no war in the Pacific, and the United States remains neutral. Then you watch as Germany begins to develop the atomic bomb all by themselves. For a change, I have a question for all of you. I want you to think very hard what major disaster was expected and prepared for in the last year and a half that never happened. As far as war goes, I have faith you are quite capable of starting one all by yourself. I'm hard-pressed to accept any criticism on my outlook on that subject. Growing up might have been a vastly different experience for me than it was for most of you. Personal responsibility, determination, honor, friendship, and self-reliance are not just words we try to live up to or fantasize about. On my world line, life is not easy. We live in a world recovering from years of war, poison, destruction, and hate. All the courtesy of the thinking and actions of people that live right now in the same world you do, worrying about which stocks to buy or whether or not a stranger is lying to them on the internet. I believe that hardship and challenge develop character and community. My first experience with war came when I joined a shotgun infantry unit at the age of 13. In the 4 years I served as a rebel, I watched hundreds of people get shot, burn, and bleed to death. I know exactly where I was and every detail of the exact moment the first nuclear warheads began falling on Jacksonville. I know the pain and regret of not acting soon enough to enjoy our relationship as a loved one dies of brain cancer from a war that gained nothing. How can you possibly criticize me for any conflict that comes to you? I watch every day what you are doing as a society while you sit by and watch your Constitution being torn away from you. You willfully eat poisoned food, buy manufactured products no one needs, and turn an uncaring eye away from millions of people suffering and dying all around you. Is this the universal law you subscribe to? Perhaps I shall let you all in on a little secret. No one likes you in the future. This time period is looked at as being full of lazy, self-centered, civically ignorant sheep. Perhaps you should be less concerned about me and more concerned about that. So this is in the year 2000. These are documented pieces of information that took place in the year 2000. Now, in 2000, right, this is November 22nd, 2000. So we're talking 11/22/2. This is a post here. Let me read this post, and then I'll circle back and we'll talk about some of the things that Teeter has shared here. The observation, this is from 11/22. The observation of time travelers appearing suddenly in a world line does not happen very often. There are two cases and 2 points of view to consider. In the first case, the time machine does not move as it goes from one world line to another and then returns. The people watching on the original timeline, world line, would wave goodbye and watch as the machine is turned on. There would be a static discharge and the air would appear to ripple as it were getting denser. Then it would stop and the machine would have appeared to have disappeared. If the machine doesn't move its position from world line to world line, the observer would not see it disappear at all. In the second case, if the machine were moved, it would disappear from the viewpoint of the observer and return in a different location based on where it was moved and turned on from the destination world line. In that case, the rippling seems to dissolve the machine and it disappears. If that happens while you are watching it leave and you expect it to return, you know it was moved or had a serious malfunction. It is actually quite dangerous to get too close to a distortion unit as it enters or leaves a world line. Advanced radiation has a very strong localized gravity field. Personally, I worry about that a great deal. It can be adjusted to some degree, the gravitational fields. The CG, or center of gravity, is adjustable within about 4 feet, and the unit is effective about 10 to 12 feet in either direction from there. The vertical distance is quite a bit shorter and is determined by the sensors in the unit. Depending on whether or not you are going forward or backward, the footprint of the unit is different. I wouldn't quite say it scoops up the ground cleanly. It sort of vibrates it loose and shakes it and takes it along for the ride. It looks like someone raked the ground an inch or so deep with a small hand hand hoe or shovel. The negative ergosphere scoops up the front and back areas of the field. The positive ergosphere leaves a stronger area near the center of the mass. It's about a cubic foot of dirt spread out over 6 feet or so. So it's interesting that he talks about a civil war in 2005, which doesn't happen. We haven't seen that. Not in this world line. So something apparently, if we are to believe Teeter, if we are to believe this experience, if we are to believe this phenomena, something on that timeline has changed. Now, one of the things that he talks about is a president who is like Lincoln, who tries to unify the people. Now, I don't know how many times Barack Obama has been compared to Abraham Lincoln, but it's a lot more than a coincidence. So, I mean, perhaps the character that Teeter is referring to is indeed Obama when he references this Lincoln-like president. He also is very prescient. The Twin Towers hadn't happened yet. 9/11 hadn't happened yet, based on all this stuff, right? So we still had a fairly strong Constitution, even though it had been abrogated by the likes of NAFTA and GATT and in some early versions of the Patriot Act, which were enacted by Bill Clinton. I believe they were called the Anti-Terror Acts. So the Constitution was being chipped away by 2000, but the broad, sweeping, large, ripping chunk of it was not removed until after the September 11th fiasco. So Teeter was really onto something, I believe, as it relates to what would happen with the Constitution. And we've seen what's happened in the Constitution post 9/11. It's just been absolutely and utterly shredded with executive orders. The Patriot Act 2, the secret versions of the Patriot Act. There are things about the Patriot Act that even the Congress and Senate don't know. And now, of course, we've got the NDAA, and we're staring down some other really crazy stuff with things like ACTA, and then of course Joe Lieberman's bill, which would revoke citizenship from people that are considered to be quote unquote terrorists. So Teeter was all over that. He got that. The mad cow thing is a very big deal. It is a very, very big deal. And I think it's one of those things that a lot of, like, for instance, we might all, if you eat meat, there's probably a chance that you might have latent CJD, Creutzfeldt-Jakob syndrome, right? Or Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, aka mad cow. There's a chance that you might have that. So, do I believe John Teeter is real? Yeah, I do. I believe that John Teeter exists. I believe he's from the future. I believe he's from a timeline. I have had my own experiences with time travel, not as obviously deluxe and sophisticated as Teeter, but I have stepped out of this timeline and I have actually experienced another timeline with other alternate lives. So I know that these things can occur. I know that they're real. So here we are. It's Neptune and Pisces. And I believe, this is, again, my belief system, and I believe that the temporal realm that we're living in is going to wobble. And that we're going to see, especially with Neptune's emergence in Pisces, we're going to see very, very fluid manifestations of these various timelines. Now, Neptune will be in Pisces for a long time. Once it hits, it's back in, it's there, and it's going to be a very interesting energy to deal with. Neptune in Pisces, I think, will give us just tremendous capacity to experience things like compassion and universal love, very heightened states of mystical experience. So if you are a meditator or you do yoga, your ability to drop down and tap into inner realms or deeper spaces of silence or deeper spaces of connectivity with the sacred thread that runs through your life, this will be very enhanced during Neptune and Pisces. So I believe that we will see a rise of much more spiritually oriented thinking and action. Okay? So, look, it's 2012 now. We're 7 years past Teeter's timeline for a civil war. Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to have a civil war. I mean, I think a civil war is I don't know if it's inevitable, but every single day, I just see more and more polarity more and more duality, more and more opposition, and quite frankly, more and more draconian laws and actions and thoughts that are being constructed to push people. People are being pushed. More guns have been bought this last year than any other time in history. People are locked and loaded. We've got the LAPD training with the United States Army, okay? There have been literally hundreds of millions, close to billions of dollars spent militarizing local police forces. This has all come through the Department of Homeland Security. If you go down to places like Ventura, they've got tanks. Tanks for crying out loud. Why do they need tanks? And what happens is that when it's kind of like this. Let's say, for instance, I give you a suit. If you're a man, if you're a woman, you get a very long evening gown, and I take you out, and I take you to a hairstylist, and you get a $200 style for your hair, and you get makeup, and you just look great. I mean, you look better than you've ever looked in your life. Same thing goes for a man. You go outside, and you're wearing that. That's going to impact your thoughts, your feelings, your speech. It's going to change you. It's going to change your persona. Okay? It just will. It just will. If you dress up if you wear a uniform every single day. All right, here's a really good example. And they've proven this, right? So in public schools, they've had a real problem with kids wearing their pants down, to their buttholes, right? Their cracks. And as a result of this, there's a very lax attitude. They're sloppy. They don't care. It all starts with the visage, right? The persona. And so some schools have enacted these rules where they have to wear school uniforms. And a lot of people say, oh, that's oppressive. Oh, it doesn't let the child express themselves. It makes them conform. Well, they've actually shown that kids that do this, and they have to wear their pants or their shirts or their dresses that are all the same, they actually do better. They do better. They study, they perform better, their testing's better. All of a sudden now, they have taken on something that's related to what they're wearing. It's given them some form of order. It's changed them. Their attire has changed them. What I'm getting at here, people, is that if you dress people up to look like RoboCop, they will act like RoboCop, okay? And that's where everything is going with the local police force, militarization of the police force. They look like RoboCop. So what happens is that they're encased in armor. And their ability to be human and vulnerable, right? I mean, one of the things theoretically that if you're a police officer and walking around in short sleeve shirt and pants, you're kind of dressed like you and I. The only thing that's different is that maybe you've got a holster and some bullets, or a holster and some communication, and a nightstick and a badge. Other than that, it's flesh and blood, me and you. There's a space of vulnerability. And theoretically, that space can allow for an individual to have a human contact, have a point of contact with their own humanity, because their skin is in the air, right? It's touching the same air that your skin or my skin would be touching. You dress them up as soldiers, and that gets taken away. And not just any soldier, but these robo-soldiers. It turns them into robo-humans, and they go out and they will do things that are not necessarily the most humane. This is what's happening, okay? This is what's happening right now. So if these things are taking place and literally pushing people to a point where they're going to have to do something, then, look, will we have a civil war? Will we have a revolution? I would be surprised if we didn't. Is that something that I want? No, absolutely not. Is that something that I am banging my hand down to incite? No, not at all. Well, I'm making that real clear. I'm into a revolution of consciousness, and I think it can happen. I think there's a whole different way of being able to shift this paradigm and this reality. And every single day that I'm alive, and every single day that I work on my blog, and I have my radio show, and I interact with people, I get affirmation and confirmation time and time again that, yes, we can shift and move and transform the social condition in ways that are far more subtle, sophisticated, and aligned than, going out and taking on the man. Now, look, I'm not saying that. Here's what I think. I think that the only way that we can affect change in a very positive way is if the people or the masses have respect of the forces that are controlling resources on the planet. And it's obvious that they don't respect us. They certainly, the one thing they do is they do fear us because there are numbers. Okay, so there is some fear there, but they don't respect us at all. So we have to be able to shift that, and we have to be able to, in some way, counteract. I wouldn't say counteract, balance the lack of respect. To let it be known that we will not stand for being able to be pushed around or have laws that are draconian and not in our best interest. That's just one man's opinion here. So I'm sorry about the chat room. I wish we could change that. So here's one little bit of positivity that you can begin to file away for the day. This is from the bizjournal.com PR Newswire. This is it's an app called it's called One Subject at a Time. OSTA. It's a bill that's being introduced in Congress, and it is being introduced by a congressman, Tom Marino of Pennsylvania. He's a Republican. It's pretty interesting. I'm going to read this. It says OSTA would require each bill Congress passes to be about one subject only. I think it's great. I mean, look, what happened when the NDAA was passed and SB 1867 was in this big, broad bill about military spending. They were able to, piggyback all these other bills into that. And so, you pass one thing and all these other things get to sneak through. OSTA would change that. And so here's, this is what Jim Babka, who's the president of DownsizeDC.org, this is what he has to say. He says, OSTA would require each bill Congress passes to be about one subject only, Babka explains. This would end the practice of clustering unrelated measures into one package. Congressional leaders have long used this trick to pass unpopular laws on the strength of popular proposals with which they're unnaturally joined. OSTA would end this fraud forever. Every bill would have to stand or fall on its own merits, declares Babka. Congressman Marino told his constituents that Obamacare was a big motivation for introducing OSTA. In order to garner enough votes to pass the law, a host of unrelated measures were tacked onto Obamacare. But multi-subject bills are an old bipartisan problem. DownsizeDC.org created OSTA in response to numerous omnibus bills when the Republicans controlled Congress. For instance, the massively unpopular Real ID Act was only passed because the Republican leadership included in it an emergency troop appropriation bill. That bill also included tsunami relief. Another example is the ban on internet poker. It was included in a port security bill, says Babka. Babka commends Representative Marino for his leadership and applauds the Williamsport Tea Party for their crucial support. Now we can begin to collect co-sponsors for this vital reform. So if you have any interest in supporting something like this, contact your local congressman and say, support this. Reach out. Look, until they pull the plug, we've got to work all these different angles to keep things moving. So support OSTA, OSTA, Representative Tom Marino of Pennsylvania. It is 11 o'clock. I've been broadcasting here for about an hour now. And again, I'm really totally bummed out about the chat experience. I hope to have that fixed up on Monday so we can all gather together and share and chat and all that good stuff. Next week, I'm going to have an update with our friend Visible. I'll be talking with him on let's see, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning his time. I'll record that. We'll throw that up on the Friday show, and we'll find out how his trip to Mexico was and what it was like, and just get a bird's eye view from his realm of consciousness on Friday morning, next Friday morning. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of this program, and I believe next Friday will be that 2-year anniversary. I started on the 12th of February. Hey, somebody's calling. How about that? It's a 612 number. Let's find out who they are, what they want to talk about. Hey, hi there. You're
Hello.
on the air. Hello.
Hello. It's your chat hostess.
Hey, what's going on,
Everything's working. Everything's working here.
Really?
Yeah, and it was right from the beginning.
I can't see shit.
I know you're the only one blocked out. We had John Sweet come in. Erica fearlessly emailed, and all they said was refresh or email them later.
Okay.
Can you? Yeah. Okay. So that's all. But the chat's been open the whole time.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. Yeah, I've had some weird stuff with Blog Talk today. Maybe it's just my computer's on hold. I'm refreshing now. Let's see how this works.
Actually, they had a message that they did updates today and yesterday, so that could have been the culprit.
What, they updated something? They updated like some new tech or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
John C. Sweet. He did stop by.
Well, that's good. That's awesome. That's I
yes.
mean, I'm an important person on the Blog Talk Radio Network. Did you know that?
Of course.
Yeah. I'm a person of note, which is why John stopped by. So.
Well, that's good.
I guess so. No, I don't know where I am.
So did you refresh? Is it working yet?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Let me just do chat again. I don't know where I am on their hierarchy, but I pay to be a part of Blog Talk, so it's good that they were able to do that and reach out to you. Okay, so the page is loaded. Let's see if you guys are in there.
Locked and loaded.
Let's see what
like
happens.
Everyone in America.
You see what I did? I just soldiered on. There you are.
I know.
Buddy.
Yes.
All right. There we go. Right on. Hi. There we go. Excellent. A lot of anonymous guests today. People just hanging out, doing their anonymous
Wednesdays
thing.
we usually get at least 15 people.
Yeah.
So this is really good. 11.
Yeah, that's not bad. Especially since I don't have any guests.
We could talk about the gluten-free lifestyle.
You know what? The gluten-free thing is taking hold. I've got a buddy of mine who's not into this stuff. He's ditching gluten. I'm telling you, it is the revolution. It is happening.
Yes.
It is on. So
true.
Yeah, I mean, my life is considerably better. Considerably better.
What happens is the gluten clogs up your intestine, so the amino acids cannot get through to build the cells properly.
Yeah.
And just fat cells get built, and not if the protein isn't in the cell correctly, and that's
Right.
what's going on a biochemical level.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that not eating wheat has done, and it's changed my life, and it's an amazing change, is that I had TMJ for years. I mean, years. My jaw would crack and pop like a bat hitting a baseball. Okay, and
right.
I stopped the wheat, and I don't have TMJ anymore. So,
Amazing.
I mean, that alone has been worth it. And, of course, I've lost about 25 or 30 pounds, and that's been worth it, too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, but I'm a lady, so I'm not going to say the numbers. But we've all seen the pictures, right?
Yeah.
I'm like a whole different person, like completely different person. So.
Well, good.
In a good way.
Yeah. Well, listen, thanks for chiming in and letting me know.
Carry on.
I've got another caller on hold. Let's find out what they want to talk about. Thanks, Janet.
Okay, bye.
Take care. There's Janet, my chat room hostess with the mostest. Let's find out who's on hold here, what they want to talk about. Hey, you're on the air. Thanks for calling in. What do you want to talk about?
Are you talking to me?
You absolutely.
I have a question. I don't know if does this mean it's like open mic night? I mean, can I ask you anything?
You can ask anything you want. Sure.
Okay. Do you do like charts and do astrology stuff for like parent-child?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm not one to toot my own horn very much. I probably should toot it more often. But I've actually had very, very powerful results in working with children's charts and their parents. And a case in point, I worked with a woman in Switzerland with her two children and was able to really get to the core of what was happening especially with her older child, a daughter, and to be able to give her some information both from a natal perspective but also from a predictive perspective that would make her daughter's challenge in school with peers and stuff a lot easier. And she took my advice. The daughter was old enough, I think she's 10 or 11 years old, to listen. She took it to heart, and within weeks, their situation shifted. Some of the transits kicked in, and long story short, everybody was very, very happy. So there you go.
Okay, because I have a crisis in that area, and I need help.
Okay.
In that, and I don't, I'm thinking I thought you.
Well, okay. Well, what's your name?
My name is Julie.
Julie, where is 520, Julie?
Arizona.
Arizona. Have we talked before? We have, haven't we?
We have.
Okay. I tell you what, Julie. Why don't we do this? Since this isn't really the astrology show.
Yeah.
Why don't you can contact me offline?
Okay.
RPM 1122 at yahoo.com. You can send me an email.
Wait a minute. RPM
1122 at yahoo.com.
At yahoo.com. Okay.
And you can send me an email, and we'll figure something out.
That sounds good because I have good credit if that tells you anything, and because I need help. And when you did your last astrology show, you have credibility with me, so I figure. Okay, all right, and then I just tell myself that you'll remember who I am when I send you an email.
Yeah, I've got a good memory. Don't worry about it.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Thank you so very much.
All right, Julie, take good care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so, hey, 2 calls on a Friday. On a far out and freaky, funky Friday, Neptune coming back into Pisces. Give you a couple of quick updates on my website. I actually sold an ad on the website, which is good because I've been working on manifesting sponsors and advertisers, and I'm selling an ad to a friend of mine, and we'll launch those ads on Monday, so that's good. And I'm going to be hopefully doing more of that so I can keep this thing rolling, and I'll also be working on the book stuff. The book stuff is happening, and of course we've got the radio show. I want to give you some numbers here. In January, I had the second largest number of users ever coming to robertphoenix.com. Okay, close to 15,000 people came to the website. 15,000 people. January, in terms of listens on Blog Talk, the second highest month, second to November. November was a real good month. Second to November on Blog Talk. Again, about 3,000 listens, a little over 3,000 listens for the entire month. And then, of course, over on YouTube, we've got the Strange Sound compilation video. I think it's probably close to 4,000 listens at this time. So things are happening. You know, we are, and I say we because you're all part of this, right? I can't do this, you know, by myself. You're listening, you're reading, you're sharing. You know, we are really lifting this thing up now. Okay. And the thing that we're lifting up is, I think, a very unique experience. It's a unique community. People have very varied perspectives. But I think the one thing that links us all together is that we're tired of the bullshit. Number one, we're tired of the bullshit on the planet. And we want a different world. And we're choosing a different world. And we're intending a different world. And we're going to do anything we can in order to facilitate that in the most loving, compassionate, and clear way possible. And sometimes, you know, the strategy is to say no, and sometimes the strategy is to say yes, whatever that is. And I'm grateful for that. So the numbers are rising, and you're all part of it. We're all a part of it. And hopefully, with those numbers, I'll be able to attract some credible sponsors and begin to, after years of putting this together, monetize and support some of the other initiatives and things that I want to do with the media. So anyway, I'm grateful. Wanted to share those numbers with you, and it's been a very good January. So getting back to the 12th. So this is interesting, right? It's my second year anniversary on 2/12/2012. Which is, I think it's a Sunday night. Maybe I'll do a special Sunday night show. That'd be kind of fun, wouldn't it, on 2/12/2012? I might just do that. I might book that. Maybe do a 2-hour show on Sunday night and try to get as many guests on as possible. Let's see if we can do that. I might try to do some sort of a giveaway, too, on 2/12/2012. See if I can get a sponsor or something like that. It's a little close, but we'll see. It's 11/12. And I'm not sure how much more I have to share about today. Just really quick. I just want to share a couple of other things here, really quickly. What was it? It is this whole thing with Whole Foods and alfalfa. Before I go, I gotta say that Whole Foods has sold out the American people. Alfalfa is such an important grain. It's a core, an absolutely core grain. Alfalfa is used for so many things, but mostly for livestock and feed. And now Monsanto is going to genetically engineer alfalfa, which means that those genetically engineered pieces of alfalfa will alter and change everything that it comes in contact with. And Whole Foods basically has said they'll turn a blind eye. They will turn a blind eye to genetically engineered alfalfa. But what's interesting is that there are people from all around the world, there are countries that are banning genetically modified foods. I'll give you, for instance, China has said no to genetically modified rice. They said no. They said, get out of here. England is forcing Monsanto out. The people of England so you've got all these countries that are saying no to genetically modified organisms and foods, and yet here in the United States, we can't say yes fast enough. It's really it's amazing. So if we use the English example, it can be done. I mean, Monsanto can be taken down, but the problem is that they're much stronger here in the U.S.
Well, there's farming in England, but it's not nearly as huge of a business and industry as it is in this country. One other bit of news before we say goodbye today. The reactors in San Onofre are now malfunctioning. I don't know if you've been following this at all, but it's an issue. We just had the issue with the Byron reactor in Illinois, which shut down for 2 days and emitted a steam cloud, likely filled with all those good elements such as cesium and thorium and all that crap. San Onofre, which I used to live not far from in Southern California, they've got damaged multiple pipes. And that's an issue. That's a big, big issue. And it's interesting. Last week, we had our nuclear or anti-nuclear advocates on, Gordon Edwards, and God, I'm always like spacing on her last name. Pamela. Help me out in the chat room. Anyway, they were talking. She was talking about specifically San Onofre, and also, well, mostly San Onofre in a separate email. This is all prior to San Onofre. So this is from the Orange County Register. Let me just read this. She says, this is from Pat Brennan. As workers began inspecting a leaky tube in one of the San Onofre nuclear plant's reactors Thursday, federal regulators said more than 800 tubes in a second offline reactor showed wear and thinning, although they are only 2 years old. What is up with that? How can you get wear and thinning on pipes that are only 2 years old? Plant officials confirmed that sensors showed a tiny amount of radioactive gas may have leaked out of a building next to the first reactor before the reactor was shut down late Tuesday. All four of the plant's steam generators in their tubes are about 2 years old, installed after being delivered to the West Coast by the Japanese manufacturer of the generators, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Some 9,700 tubes carry water from the reactor and through each generator. So we've got issues down there in San Onofre. We have issues. And the wear and tear on those tubes does not seem to be very, very congruent with something just being 2 years old. Anyway, we're going to be seeing more and more of the nuclear challenge, nuclear errors, nuclear breakdown as the days progress here. It's just going to happen, folks. Some of these reactors are old. Some of them are in disrepair, and some of them, quite frankly, are in very dubious hands at times. And what we're looking at is literally a network of atomic bombs set up around the country with reactors. And it's amazing in California. Like if you look at San Onofre, it's right on the ocean. I mean, right on the ocean. And a lot of these power plants are close to bodies of water, whether it's rivers or oceans or ports. So just like Fukushima, they're susceptible to rising tides and the whims of Mother Nature. So just add that to the crap basket. What you want to do though is you've got to stay healthy the best way possible, the best way that you can. And that's just how it is. You want to be here on this planet, you're going to have to take responsibility for everything. Now, it's just the way it is. Your health, your economy, your income, your emotions, whatever it is, you're in the driver's seat. So there's nothing that you can do or I can do about what's happening down in San Onofre. Talk about it, share it, but what we can do is do our best to stay as healthy as we possibly can. And in response to this and other factors in our environment, such as, of course, chemtrails and all the crap that we're breathing every single day and have been, since 1997. All right, so that's it. I'm gonna put a wrap in the show. An hour and 20 minutes of nonstop talking is about as much as I can do without a guest. So next week we'll have Visible on. He'll be on Friday. We'll have Constance Denby. She'll be on. I think probably the following week. No, the following week I'll have John Friederlander, who, according to Richard Grossinger, is the best psychic on the planet. I'll have John on in 2 weeks. In 3 weeks on Friday, I'll have Constance Denby, who is the quote-unquote godmother of New Age music. She's an interesting person, a friend of mine. I wanted to have her on the show for a while. And we don't always agree on everything, but we agree on more things than not. So she's a kick, and you'll enjoy chatting with her and listening to some of her music, especially some of the whale cell stuff. Okay, so that's it. We've reached the end of the show. And, you know, when it comes to living in timelines in the future, I think the best strategy for all of that is to live as close to the now as possible. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of observation, it takes a lot of perception, and it takes time. It takes time to cultivate your awareness to being in the now. And if you can be in the now, then all timelines begin to fade and melt, and you're right in the present. You're right in the present moment, and there's nowhere else you really want to be. Trust me on that. All right, so use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I am Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to Far Friday Farcast, and let's see if we can get out of here with some music. Let's see if we can get into, how about a little Ari Oakland. Let's get into Ari today. Let's play Wasteland. I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
One of those city of ash, where everyone abandons the past, and the forsaken drift aimlessly to the graves and travel streets. Walking through the wreckage as the smoke-filled horizon begins to fade. Along gutters littered with the residue of the lives washed away. I hear the subterranean moans of living dead whose ghosts walk on barren streets. Like their wilted youth, they bend their head and hang towards their feet. And slowly trudge along. Corpses, desolation garden, and I'm descending deeper in the dark. And I the Holocaust, I shout.